Hi, so I had the chance today to speak to 6 high school Spanish classes at Susquehannock High School. I had Carter, my son, in one of the classes and Christian in the other. So I had them record and I had a chance to speak about culture, what we're doing in Costa Rica, as well as life in general. So please take a look at what's coming up. It is a level 1 Spanish class at Susquehannock High School. Buenos días. ¿Cómo están? Bien. Bien, gracias. So I'm going to start off by showing you some money from Costa Rica so we can have it circulate while I'm presenting. So I have some coins here, big ones, some little ones. How much do you think this might add up to in American dollars?
$5. One.
Pretty close. $1.20-ish. So.
Wow, that's way off.
Well, it's deceiving because it takes 560 colones to make $1 US. So that's pretty hard math if you're just trying to do it off the top of your head. So we simplify it a little bit. And so this is 2,000 colones. And we do a little trick. So you move the decimal point over 3 times, and then you multiply by 2. So if I have 2,000 colones, it's approximately how many US dollars? 4. Because you move decimal point over 3 times, so you're down to 2, and then you double it, so then you get to 4. And their bills get longer as they get worth more, which is pretty cool. All right, so pura vida, that is the greeting in Costa Rica. It means hello, it means goodbye, it means pretty much anything you want it to mean. And sometimes people will approach you and they won't even continue in the conversation until you have greeted them with pura vida. Literally translated, it's pure life. So here we have our family picture. There's Francisco. And this is the view from our house. So you can kind of see a rainbow in there. We see a rainbow almost every day in Costa Rica. And it's very lush. So we're up on a hill. There's a little bit of a valley before you get into town. So it's basically at the treetop level that we're looking at from the house. Here you have a statue. SJO is the abbreviation for San Jose. So you see these all over the city. And they're fun to take your pictures with. So we live in Naranjo de Alajuela, Costa Rica. That's the name of our town. And addresses in Costa Rica. So if you were to live in San Jose, you might have an address like you would have here, like 6 Main Street in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, or San Jose, Costa Rica. But where we live, I'm going to read our address, and I'm going to see if you guys can pick out anything from it. See if you can maybe address an envelope to us. All right. Alto Murillo, 125 metros este de entrada de cerro, en mano izquierda, casa gris con puerto gris, Naranjo de Alajuela, Costa Rica. What'd you pick up?
Costa Rica.
There you go. What?
Numbers.
Yeah? Anything else? All right, so the numbers aren't even the house number. That's the amount of meters it is from the entrance of the hill that we live near. So it is Alto Murillo, which is the area that we live in Naranjo, and then it's 125 meters east of the entrance of the hill. They measure by light posts. So each light post is about 100 meters apart. So we're from one to the next and then another quarter of the distance to the next light post. And then on the left-hand side, we're in the gray house with the gray gate in Naranjo, which means orange tree in Alajuela, which is our province. So there you go. That's not fun when we order delivery food sometimes, and that's what I have to tell them. And they make it usually, but it takes them a while. All right.
I wanted to tell you, I didn't say it in the other classes, when I lived in Costa Rica, I lived up in Heredia.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so my address was Frente del Colegio de María Auxiliadora.
Oh,
So it was
nice.
just in front of
Yeah.
Catholic high school. Yeah.
So funny. So we work with Amaveo Group. It is a nonprofit organization, and we're focused on sustainability, so trying to get people on their own, earning livable wages. And we have probably 7 sites around the world. Our site is focused on refugee resettlement. So we have a bunch of refugees coming in from other countries in Central America. And so we are trying to get them established and then on their own. We offer internships, so after high school, if you guys want to get some intercultural experience, you can come on down to Costa Rica and do an internship with us. And then we also do mission trips where we will do things like teach English or do some service projects. Yeah. Okay, so I'm a nurse by background. I have a bachelor's degree in ministry, and I studied high school Spanish for 5 years. And then my husband is a special education teacher. He's a master's degree in special ed. And he went to Costa Rica just on Duolingo Spanish. So he took that app and he studied and he did it religiously. And he got himself up to, I would say, an intermediate conversational level, which is really good for just using an app. And now, of course, being immersed in it, he's continuing to improve. And we both have extensive cross-cultural experience. So if you are interested in living overseas, I highly recommend doing things like hosting foreign exchange students, getting to intercultural festivals and that sort of thing, because it has definitely prepared us to live in Costa Rica. So here are a few pictures. Here we have one of our favorite restaurants. It's a very traditional Costa Rican restaurant with all these different typical, traditional carts and such around. Then we have, we're gonna call him Chewbacca. I can explain that later. So Chewbacca, and then we have Francisco. Do you want to explain where you are here?
We're in San Jose, and we're at like a strip mall kind of area, and we were walking around, and then that's Pops, I think, and we got drinks. So.
Yep. So Pops is an ice cream shop that they have all over Central America, and on any given block in San Jose, I've seen up to 3 on one block. So they are everywhere in San Jose. Then we have Copos. So to me, if you are gonna go to Costa Rica, you're not truly gonna experience Costa Rica without having a Copo. It is essentially a snow cone with layers of sweetened condensed milk and powdered milk in it, which doesn't sound appealing, but it is really good. And then they have there's competing businesses that sell you cocoa in the parks, and so then they just keep adding to it to try to win your business, so it gets really overwhelming. Then, this is my other son, Carter. He's a senior here, and we are at Sarcero, Costa Rica, and there are these different arches that the bushes are cut into. There's all sorts of animals and people and everything, and this row of arches that you can walk straight through is probably twice the distance of this room, and it's just a really cool park there. The next thing is a paterno. I would never look at it and think that I'm gonna eat it, but that's what you do. And it has this gross, rough outer shell, and then it is filled with these pods, and in each pod is a seed with a fuzzy white coat on it, and that's the part you eat. You eat that fuzzy white coat. What do you think it tastes like?
I don't remember, but I remember not liking it.
Yeah, I like it. It tastes like old-fashioned cinnamon candy to me. I think it's good, but I don't eat more than 1 or 2 in a city. Next, this guy was thankfully on the outside of our house. He's about this big. He's a beetle. And then plus the antenna coming off of him. I didn't know what he was at first, so I had to Google. It's a harlequin beetle. So they have lots of different unique things in Costa Rica that we don't have here. All right, so interest in Costa Rica, coffee. Coffee's everywhere. We live amongst coffee farms, and it's one of the main exports from Costa Rica. And our town that we live in was voted best tasting coffee in the world for many years, and I agree, it's my favorite. Refugees, so they have a huge amount of refugees coming in, 3,000 to 4,000 Nicaraguan refugees every week coming to Costa Rica, and I'll get into that more in a little bit. And the refugees work in the coffee fields. So oftentimes you'll be walking down the street and you hear babies crying from the coffee field. And so if you're 6 or older, you pick the beans for coffee. And if you're 5, you watch all the kids that are younger than you in the field. They might have a little house for them to sit in, like a little hut. So many refugee families have lots of kids because that means more hands to pick the beans. The school year is from the beginning of the year, like February through November-ish, so they have the harvest season off so the kids can help in the fields. Those families are not typically making a living wage, so life for them is pretty rough, which is why we are there. And then U.S. Relations and Tourism, they love Americans to come down, gringos to come down and pay, you know, for vacations and all that, because that's going to give them business. So between coffee and other exports and tourism, those are the two main industries in Costa Rica. And then we have healthcare and education. So after World War II, they disbanded their military and they put all of that money into healthcare and education. So you have a decent healthcare system, and then every child is guaranteed an education as long as they can have a uniform. But the uniforms, when you have 6 to 8 kids and you're a refugee family, are a little bit too much to afford. And then even like socks. I might wear the socks one day to school and then my sister might wear them the next day to school because they just can't afford things like socks for every kid in their family. So if you think about it, these few things are related to each other. So healthcare, education, which they have because they disbanded their military. Why do you think this, or how do you think that plays into it? Tourism and the U.S. relations. Any ideas? If they don't have a military, they're gonna be really nice to us, right? Because we have a military. So they're gonna know that we're gonna have their back if something were to happen to them. So that and the dollar that the tourism brings in, so they're gonna treat us really well when we are there. And thankfully that keeps us fairly safe as well from crime. Weather in Costa Rica, it rains about 8 months per year. Only a couple hours per day, so it's tolerable, but it gets a little old. Other than that, the coasts are pretty warm, and then we live in the Central Valley, and then we live up on a hill, so we have really nice weather. Usually you can wear like a sweatshirt in the morning and in the evenings, and then in between just something that you're comfortable in. So I really like the weather there. Wildlife, so we talked about that beetle, and the other things, so the things that keep me up at night. Roosters, lizards that are in my bedroom, they're about this big, and they're loud. But they eat bugs, so we let them room with us. And then the other one's cats and dogs. They have a huge cat and dog population, and they are loud. So next up we have produce at the feria, which is the Costa Rican specific word for farmer's market. And we go there and buy our produce about once a week. It's open Fridays and Saturdays, and we try to find something new to try about every week. At this point, do you guys have any questions? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is causing all of the immigration or migration to Costa Rica. So in Nicaragua, you have a lot of government corruption. There's a media blackout, so we don't get to see what's happening down there because the government is cut off all sources to the outside world of what's going on there. And essentially, since April-ish, the government repealed some of the aid that they were giving people, and the college students and the college-age kids protested that. So the government didn't like the protests, so they basically told that age people, you can join the military or we're gonna kill you. So that's what's been happening. So a family that we know of that we're actually expecting to come to us in Costa Rica has 2 college-age sons, and they've basically been on self-imposed house arrest since that started happening, because if they leave their house, they could be killed by the government. Then gang violence in El Salvador. So I mentioned Chewbacca earlier. He and his family came to us from El Salvador, and we got to Costa Rica in January, and in February we got a phone call asking if we could take this family in, and I knew their history. So 4 years ago, their oldest son Leo was killed by gang members because they gave him a choice: you can join us or we're gonna kill you. And he did not want to join the gang, so they killed him in a home invasion. So now come February of this year, they invaded the home again and they were gonna kill Chewbacca, but they said, you know, we're gonna give you one more chance. So they beat him up and they said, next time we come back, we're gonna kill you. So we got this phone call, can they come live with you? Which, of course, they can come live with us. And the first morning that they woke up in Costa Rica in our home, they got notice that overnight the other boys in the neighborhood had been shot and killed by gang members. So they definitely have a really good reason to be trying to get out of their country right now. He has lost all of his friends, and he can name at least 20 kids that he knows by name that have been killed by gangs since he left there in February. Any questions about that? Okay, so here's Chewbacca again. There's Maria Elena. This is Ulises, his stepdad. If you want to keep up with us as we're out and about, our YouTube channel is a great way to look at everyday life in Costa Rica. So we go to the feria, we go to San Jose on the bus, the beach, and what else? What else do we do? We cook.
Up the hill.
We go up the hill. Yep. We do lots of things on there, just kind of everyday things, not your touristy things. We do some touristy things, but for the most part, everyday life in Costa Rica. And then Instagram is also the Feed My Sheep, and Facebook, the Slaytons with Amaveo group. These two aren't as built up because we're just beginning to start with our nonprofit. So once that gets built up, more content will be added. So next up, this is a church, and this is typical of what you're going to see in Latin American center of the town. It's a church, and then you have a park. And then each town, it's the same setup, but they all have their own personalities. So here we are in our park in Naranjo, and we're eating copos. And our park was recently renovated, and they put in some like checker or chess tables, so that's pretty cool. And almost all the parks have exercise equipment. I think you can see some of it back there. And this is the top of the hill. So they used to have a church at the top of the hill. I think it closed because not everybody wanted to go to the top of the hill every Sunday morning because it's a beast to climb. It's about 45 minutes for me, and it took me probably 2 months to be able to get to the top because it's intense. So they have this left, a little platform, and then your bleachers there. And then the other infrastructure they have at the top is this building, or this ruins, I guess, and there's stairs at the top. That's my other son Carter there, and there's graffiti that's actually really pretty there.
Okay, thank you.
This is almost all the way at the top of a volcano called Poas Volcano. It's been closed. They have a national park at the top. It's been closed because they haven't been able to get a good read on the seismic activity there. And so that means a lot of the businesses leading up to it have been dying, and we like to go and try to give them a little business and just enjoy the view. You can also buy strawberries. It's one of the only places you can buy strawberries there in Costa Rica.
Do you know how long it's been closed?
Since I think the end of last year, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And this is Maria Elena, again, we call her Nena, and she's enjoying a coffee in the National Theater. The National Theater is really the crown jewel of architecture in Costa Rica, and you can only get in if you are going to drink coffee in the coffee shop or you have a ticket to a performance. They don't like you take a lot of pictures of the building, so this is what I have for that, but it is really beautiful, so if you get to Costa Rica, make sure you check that out. And lastly, we have pupusa. Pupusa is Salvadoran staple food. I love it. It's delicious. What do you think?
It's the best food ever.
Best food ever. Yeah. So it's typically corn or rice flour with, I like mine with cheese and sometimes beans inside. They have pork, sometimes chicken. Oh, they also have flowers, like budding flour that they put in there. And then a cabbage mixture, and then a tomato sauce of sorts. Any questions? Okay. Do we have time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna ask you guys, or give you guys some 2 truths and a lie. So you can either hold up 1, 2, or 3 fingers to tell me which one you think is the lie for Costa Rica.
So, uno, dos, o tres. So listen to which one you think is the lie.
All right, so in Costa Rica, you drive on the left. Costa Ricans refer to themselves as tico for boys, tica for girls. Costa Rica is roughly the size of West Virginia. So 1, 2, or 3.
Which one is it?
Okay, we're all over the place. It is, we drive on the right, so that is the lie. Number 1 is the lie. And okay, so go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead with your next one.
Next set, you cannot flush toilet paper in Costa Rica. There are 801 miles of coastline in Costa Rica, and they love spicy food. You all hope it's number 1, right? But it is number 3. You do not like spicy food. And you cannot flush your toilet paper. Actually, that's probably good. If they like spicy food and you can't flush your toilet paper, that would be good. Okay. It's the first time I put that together. Anyway, they don't like spicy food, which bums me out because I love spicy food and I can't find it there. And you just have to throw your toilet paper away. So. Okay, last one.
And that's all through Central America, it's the infrastructure.
You have to like constantly throw your trash.
Well, in each stall, there are little bins,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
and you'll find that, yeah, it's
And
common.
then in our personal bathrooms, we just have a little covered can and then
Yes,
take it out. Yeah.
It's not as bad as it seems.
yeah.
Okay, next and last group. As North Americans, you are only allowed into Costa Rica for 90 days at a time. It's mandatory to tip service staff 25%, and Costa Rica is divided into 7 provinces. Number 2 is the lie. So we don't tip typically in Latin American countries. And 90 days is for a typical visit. There's exceptions, like if you go in as a volunteer, you can be up to a year, but for the most part, it's a 90-day. It's not even a visa, it's just an allowance to be there. All
Yeah,
right.
you're paying taxes more or less, paying to stay, yeah.
Yeah.
I found that getting stamps in my passports. Is that what you have to do? Get it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go to Nicaragua, get it stamped. You did that, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Any other questions from Cindy?